Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cinema A to B. This is my co-host Alec. I'm Ben.
Hi everybody.
So Alec, today we're going to be talking about a film. You know, when we decided to do this podcast, I knew for a fact that we were going to talk about this movie. I didn't know exactly when. I think it makes sense now to just get it in the can, as it were. Your favorite film of all time,
okay.
Right? What? It's not?
It is. Oh, I'm surprised. Oh, this is what we're starting with. I'm excited. I thought it was a different one.
You thought we were talking about Top Gun Maverick.
I did.
We're not. That's next week. That's next week.
I misread the email.
Yeah, I know you did. This one is your favorite film of all time.
Hands down.
Michael Mann's 1995 crime drama epic, Heat.
Point of clarification, not The Heat with Sandra Bullock. It is Heat.
And what, Melissa McCarthy?
And Melissa McCarthy. No, this is Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
Yes.
And many other great people.
Yes, many other performances that I think kind of get lost sometimes unless you watch it again and again and again, as we both have.
Yes. Hands down, this is my favorite film of all time. I can not watch it back to back, but I easily watch it at least once or twice a year. Feel good is not the right word, but just to be impressed over and over again. It is a masterpiece. In my opinion, Mann has done a lot of great films, but this to me is his masterpiece of all of the stuff he's done. Just the timing, the character building, the story, the action, the sound design, everything is so thought out and processed. I mean, he is definitely an auteur of just he controls everything, but he also does a great job of getting really great people around him who kind of help him with stuff. And I know people say it's slow, people say it's too long. I completely and utterly disagree with him. You cannot take out, there's maybe like one or two things you can take out, but so much is building the character or building tension or building this, not the world is not the right thing, but basically just building this kind of these character arcs and where they're going, that if you take too much out or even little bits, you lose some of those kind of idiosyncrasies or those special parts of the characters, So I think the biggest thing that I always like to say, and I'm talking to people about this movie, is when De Niro goes into the hotel near the end of the film, the latter third of the film, he goes into the hotel and most people would see him, show him walking to the hotel and then getting to the floor that he's on, right? You don't need this intercut 90 seconds of him walking through the lobby or walking, getting to the elevator or doing all these different things. But there's so much in the character that you can just see him of like looking at the different people around the space, looking at the hotel clerks and noticing things and kind of just how well trained Robert De Niro's character is in this film. And again, it feels superfluous at first, but you take that out and you lose some of these things, that he's still, even at the end of this, of all the craziness that has happened, he's still on top of his game. He's still really good at it. So, yeah.
No, where to begin? Yes. It is a masterwork. It is Mann's best movie. And there are a few people that I know some folks that prefer something like Last of the Mohicans, and that's fine. I love Last of the Mohicans, but Heat is far and away his best film of all time. And the challenge now is he's still directing, but it's unlikely he'll ever surpass it, and that's fine. It's a masterwork, and it's operating. The reason it's a masterwork is because it is operating it at a maximum level of expertise on every front: script, acting, editing, cinematography. Sadly, this watching Heat unfortunately makes me sad that Michael Mann made the decision to stop shooting film when he did. Collateral's got some cool looks to it from the digital standpoint that offers an aesthetic that film doesn't. but he never really went back to the digital, and he never went back to film, and he embraced the digital, in my opinion, too soon before the cameras were really ready. Now you wouldn't notice a difference, right? I mean, the cameras they're running now, the Arri Alexas and Sony Venice, and those cameras emulate film very well. But yeah, when I watch it, it makes me sad that it's one of his last true films.
Yeah.
That, and I think The Insider. And after that, it was all digital. And so I think he lost something by not shooting film anymore.
Well, didn't his DP change after Heat or The Insider?
He did. He did. He ditched I think there was a falling out because the DP, which if I'm not mistaken, is it Vittorio
I'm looking right
Storaro?
Now. You keep talking. I'm looking.
Okay. I believe there was a falling out with the DP based on the
cinematography on Heat.
Dante Spinotti.
Okay.
Dante Spinotti. I whiffed on that bad.
That's okay.
But yeah, there was a falling out with Spinotti because Spinotti was not ready to leave film.
Mm-hmm.
And Mann was. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with workflow and not being able to see dailies for a day or two while everything was being processed, where the digital's kind of immediately what you have.
Not a cleaned up version, but at least you can get an idea of what's happening. So,
but Heat is just, I understand it's 3 hours plus, and that's just a barrier to entry for some people, and it is, and that's fine. But where are you going to cut? What are you going to get? What are you going to remove? And it's not like the movie takes forever to build. It opens with an amazing sequence. The music starts. That's a big thing with me, is the soundtrack. The score for Heat is tremendous, and it really is kind of ahead of its time. It doesn't even feel particularly dated now. There's a lot of electronic in it that has aged well, and you can't always say that. Some electronic doesn't age well, but the score is really, really good, and it starts right off. And you start off with De Niro, and another scene where he stays on him as he walks into the hospital, through the hospital, commandeers the ambulance. And it builds from that moment on. And it isn't more than a few minutes in that you get the big first initial heist with the armored truck, which is still just iconic. I mean, and then obviously the big crescendo bank robbery scene, which Christopher Nolan homaged completely for The Dark Knight. And this is a movie that Nolan just adores. For good reason. I've seen, public pressers, basically special screenings of Heat with that Nolan organized more or less. And he brought Mann in, and you can just watch Nolan just fanboy just fanboy all over in the presence of Mann. And I can't blame the guy. This isn't my favorite movie of all time, but it's probably top 3 at this point.
Yeah.
And ask me tomorrow, and I might say this is also number 1. I mean, it just kind of depends on the day, but yeah, really, really special movie. And unfortunately, I'm running into this issue now. I'm older. We're 41 years old. I've got coworkers. I've got a really good coworker, videographer, photographer I work with, who enjoys movies, and he's very talented. And his film catalog is kind of different. He's seen some similar things overlap, but the kid's not seen Heat. And I tried to get him to watch it, and I said, add it to the list. Well, the reality is there is no list. And if he's listening, which he probably will be, Johnny, freaking watch it, Johnny. Heat. Watch Heat.
You'll thank us.
Yeah,
not me.
I mean, it's. Yeah, and to your point, it is carried by De Niro and Pacino, but the performances you get from the secondary cast, Val Kilmer, top of his game, Tom Sizemore, top 2 performance he's ever given, the other being Private Ryan, and the list goes on. And you've got like lesser characters that like you've got a really weird, it almost feels like a cameo, but it works. This is a really weird character played by Jon Voight with a really bad mustache. But, but it's, yeah, the cast is incredible. Ashley Judd's really good.
Pretty much everybody is fantastic in this. You know, you don't. I mean,
really it's even funny to say that Hank Azaria is in Heat. And he is, and he's good.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
So going really back to the music you were talking about, I liken it a lot to like Tarantino does a great job of picking very obscure or like not in the zeitgeist of like modern culture and stuff and bringing that back to the forefront. What you kind of hearkened on is the fact that I think Mann does a great job of picking timeless classics, you know, or songs that will transcend generations that are of their time, but won't feel out of place a decade or two later. Because, like, you know, I love Collateral as well. Collateral is probably my second favorite of Mann's. You know, I know blasphemy from the Last of the Mohicans people, but the soundtrack is still fantastic. Couple decades later from Collateral, and then obviously it uses a lot more music and songs than Heat does, but yet they still feel great, like good choices. And again, it's not that Mann's doing this, hey, let's hear this, you know, song that no one's heard about that's really good. It's more of knowing how to bring that music in that's not going to go out of date, that's classic, that's not, you know, just style, but it has substance that's going to add to it. And
yeah, no,
I really like that.
Absolutely. And I think there's some classical elements in the Heat score along with kind of synth stuff. And the only movie I can think of where he kind of used an electronic score that's not really aged as well, that's not, it feels dated, but I still really like it, is Manhunter.
Oh, yeah.
Manhunter uses some interesting synthesizer type stuff, but the score is still really good. And there's a lot in common with the musical tone in Manhunter that he uses. What I think Manhunter's like 86 and then Heat's 95. So almost 10 years later. Totally recommend Manhunter, by the way. I'm going to get some guff for this, but that's my favorite of the Hannibal Lecter movies. I do think Sir Anthony Hopkins is the better Hannibal, but I think I enjoy Manhunter better as a film than Silence of the Lambs. Probably get some heat for that, but pun intended.
Well, you know, hey, that's okay. That's what opinions are for. So,
yeah.
Oh man. So I do have to say, like, I know, obviously the bank scene is fantastic. The gunfight afterward. That is 100% my favorite action sequence of all time. Like, and there's so much in it. I mean, very sad that it kind of was, you know, not, we had, oh my goodness, a copycat kind of did it in real life, you know, in downtown LA,
did it in I think it was North Hollywood.
Was it North Hollywood? Okay.
Yeah.
Which sucks and is terrible. But I mean, when you have Val Kilmer being used in the U.S. military as like, this is how you're changing mags or clearing stuff, you know, like that's how good this is. This is how much Mann cares. One of my favorite things is with sound design is that he required the use of the actual gun noises. Like a lot of times when you hear a gunshot, that's not actually what that gun sounds like. It's, you know, just we want to use this because this sounds better, or we have this already, let's use it. He was just like, no, we are going to get the actual sound of this gun to be able to use it for this shot, you know? And I really appreciated it. Now, it also sounded amazing and just like crazy. I mean, you get that pumping on some 5.1 or, you know, surround sound, and it just sounds fantastic and just, you know, going everywhere.
Yeah. And I actually think that scene is the reason it's so good is the sound design. Mm-hmm. Like visually it's super impressive, and the editing is super tight, and it's really interesting because that's a really hard sequence to shoot. I don't I don't think people realize how difficult the degree of difficulty of keeping all of the action fluid, but the viewer is able to understand exactly where everybody is in that open city kind of center. That's really tough to do. And so visually it all makes sense, like where they're moving towards, where the police are, where guys are coming kind of from their flank and shooting at them. But that scene doesn't work without sound. Without the level of sound design it is. It would feel so much more muted, and the intensity level would go down. So yeah, that scene lives and dies with its mix, and Foley and the rest of it. But yeah, it's never been. It's been attempted to be duplicated. I felt like when I watched The Town, Ben Affleck's The Town, they kind of tried to give a little nod to it. But you could tell they weren't trying to top it, because the shootout in The Town didn't. I think the shootout when they're dressed in nun's garb didn't last very long.
No,
but the Town exists as essentially an homage to Heat. I mean,
it's the same kind of process.
Yeah.
But I think what this movie has done that others really have a hard time doing is making both your protagonist and an antagonist someone that you can root for. Like at this point, I it's hard to say who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist, depending on where you line of like who you want to win, or like who, because it is, it obviously starts off with De Niro, but then, Pacino's the cop, so you're like, oh, well, he's the good guy, De Niro's the bad guy, but it's also like De Niro's not an evil character. Like, that's what I think. It's like he's does he do bad stuff? Obviously, yes, but like he's not a true, evil character in this, and so you can kind of relate to him. You can kind of root for him, which makes obviously the last sequence just, when it's the two of them, just so tense, because you're just like, who's going to get it? Like, who am I really rooting for? Yeah. And hands down, the ending is probably one of my favorite endings of all time in moviedom. Like, just the music choice, the shot choice, just the sequences beforehand, the characters in it. I mean, like, Pacino and De Niro don't spend that much time together, like on screen. You really have the coffee shop and the last sequence when they're actually on screen together. And yet it is so powerful. Both of those scenes are so powerful that we tout them like in other movies now that they're doing together, and it's just it can't be replicated.
Well, in audiences, unfortunately, I never really got to experience this, right? Because I was 13 or 14, I think, when Heat came out, and I wasn't allowed to go watch it. No. I mean, it was a hard R rating. I couldn't tell you when I saw it. I think probably 4 or 5 years later, I think, on video is when and that was fine. It's a very mature film, but the audiences had been waiting forever, wondering when are we going to get Pacino and De Niro in the same movie? I mean, these were the two titans of cinema for, at that point,
a decade?
Basically for more like a decade and a half.
Yeah.
Maybe pushing 20 years.
Well, I guess you get Pacino with Godfather and such. Yeah.
Yeah, Pacino with Godfather, and then De Niro comes on a few years later with, stuff like Taxi Driver and then Raging Bull. But audiences had been kind of wondering who's going to do it. And I don't think anybody wanted to touch it, because I think they were afraid we're going to bring in Pacino and De Niro in the same film and it's going to bomb. And like audiences are just going to be flabbergasted that you would do that. So if there's ever a movie to have combined them, this was going to be it. This was perfection. And you made an interesting point with the viewer kind of wondering who's the protagonist and the antagonist. And there really isn't. They're basically they're each the different side of the same coin. Yeah, is really what they are. They're basically the same guy.
There's a flip side to that coin.
Just ventured. Yeah, there's a flip side. What if I got you boxed in?
Anyways,
I will not hesitate, not for a second. Yeah. But no, you make an interesting point, because traditionally in cinema, you give the protagonist more screen time than you give the antagonist. And if that's true,
then De
Niro is the protagonist, because he gets way more screen time than Pacino, way more. And that's ultimately kind of what happens watching it, is you end up kind of rooting for, at least I did, rooting for De Niro.
Yeah.
To pull off what he wants to pull off. And unfortunately, he's chosen a lifestyle that just, he's not going to be able to return from. And obviously he makes a very key decision when he goes to kill Waingro. That, I mean, he had it, he was free and clear. Had his woman, could have hopped on the
even
aircraft.
Says it too. He's just like,
he does.
He's gone.
He's gone. Viewers are going to be like, what the hell? Our terrible Pacino impressions. Yeah.
Oh no, that wasn't even trying. I wasn't even trying.
Yeah.
But and I love the fact that when he comes out and De Niro sees Pacino, and he's been talking this thing like, if you have no attachments, nothing that you can't drop within 30 seconds. And that scene of he looks at the girl, looks at Pacino, is like 30 seconds before he just drops her.
I think on the numbers it's 30. Yeah, it's timed exactly to his earlier dialogue in the movie. Yeah. It's perfect.
It's perfect. I mean, it's those kind of things where you're just like, he actually has to make the decision, but then he does. But again, going to that ending with Moby's God Moving Over the Waters,
which wasn't the original score.
What?
No, there's another piece of music.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, there's another piece of music. It exists. In fact, I think it sits somewhere on the official soundtrack, which I have on CD.
Checking now.
There is the original song was not Moby's God Moving Over the Waters. There was a different piece of music that was much more in line with music you've heard earlier in the movie, because it was from the same composer. And Mann screened it with it, and it was just like, this just doesn't work. It's not working. It's not working for me. And so I believe Mann if I'm not mistaken, I think Mann handpicked that piece and had them lay that in. And that's the perfection we get. Yeah. Because it is, that song, that piece of music is just, obviously nobody's going to be able to envision anything else sitting in that space. As the credits roll, and
it's too perfect.
I can't explain why, but it feels like that frame that it ends on feels like an older movie than it is. Like, it feels like movies that ended like in the 50s or 60s would like freeze frame, or it doesn't ever really freeze frame, but it's so rare that a movie like will just hold on like the two main characters like that. Framed the way it is, and then have the credits roll. Like, that doesn't, I don't recall seeing a whole lot of other movies like it. And I actually would challenge anybody that's listening or watching on YouTube, if you can find other movies that kind of end the way that, because I could be really wrong. But I mean, Pacino's back is to you, De Niro's dead, sitting on that. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, I'm not freaking giving a spoiler alert for 1995 film. Sorry. If you haven't seen this. I'm gonna have to tell poor Johnny not to listen to this.
Listen to it afterwards, or get halfway through and then stop.
Yeah. But yeah, the way it kind of holds on that framing, and that reminds me, the framing in this movie. You could freeze frame almost every shot in this movie, and you have like a perfect masterclass on how to frame things in ultra widescreen, because it's 2:3. I think it's 2:3:5 aspect ratio. They're nice widescreen, and they use anamorphic lenses. And the way he frames everything is just him and Spinati. Just perfect. Just perfect. Not a frame is wasted in Heat. It's something else. It's something else. I even had Gwen watch it one time. I think she made it through and appreciate it for what it was. But this is a guy's movie. Like, it is. I'm sure there's women out there that really enjoy it, but Heat's a guy's crime drama epic. Yeah.
I mean, the female characters in there are, minor parts. They're, strong characters, and Mann doesn't throw them to the side, but they're definitely not the focal points of this. Like,
no, he doesn't. He doesn't have weak women in his movies anyway.
Even Edie is strong, and she's the she gives him the cold shoulder there for a while. Mm-hmm. When she realizes what he does. Yeah. But then, Pacino's love interest, she's a super strong character too. And then he just has to tell her, I'm not what you're looking for. Cause he was just his career. He's just a walking, breathing homicide detective, basically. And homicide and, hold on to it. Keeps you sharp on the edge. Where I gotta be. Got a job off that quote. We say it here. Got a job off that quote. Yeah, at EP. Because the guy picked up on it.
And he picked up on it?
Yeah, he was like, "That's right. Nice pull." He goes, and then he looks at me in the interview. He goes, when you after a week or two when you're here, I'll tell you my Michael Mann story, because the guy had bet Michael Mann or stuff like that. And I was like, "Oh, I guess I got the job then." I mean, if you're already
for real.
So, but it was one of those weird interviews that was comfortable, and he said something, and
important tip for everyone, quote Heat.
And you'll get a job.
In your next job interview.
I mean, anecdotal evidence, but 100% of the time that I've quoted Heat in an interview, I've gotten the job.
So 100% of the time it works every time.
Every time. So
yeah, no.
But there's so many good quotable lines in this movie too.
It is. That's really interesting too.
Because I mean, it's not a comedy.
No, it's not, and it's super quotable. Yeah. Yeah, mostly Pacino.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
His delivery, how he gets it out, like DeNiro's got a couple good ones in there,
Yeah, but he's so much less. He's much more in control character, so much more reserved, and Pacino's just this live cannon, which is why you cast Pacino.
Yeah, But I love that, just see why you brought it up. It just made me think. I love the fact that the guy who's outside the law is the reserved one. But yet the guy who is the cop is the wild one, just the super emotional, kind of breaks the rules kind of a situation. But yet,
it's an interesting dichotomy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they still could have easily cast them the opposite.
Reverse.
Where De Niro's the cop. But that doesn't make sense to me, right? Like, it's the whole thing of the thief only can mess up once and he's going to get caught. And the law, the officer doesn't have that problem. He gets a bad lead, whatever, on to the next one. So De Niro had to be more controlled as a character. Otherwise he'd be behind bars, which apparently he was, right?
He said he was not going back.
Yeah. I'm never going back there. So
that's why I had a file and everything. So,
but this movie to me is a lesson on persistence, because from the director, from Mann, because he basically made this movie 3 times, and Heat was the third iteration. He made Thief with James Caan, which this has heavy elements of, and Thief's a good movie. And then he makes a made-for-TV version of this thing called LA Takedown, which had a big gunfight and lesser actors. Like, they even had the coffee shop scene, if I'm not mistaken, but with like TV, like B or C level actors. And then he makes, and I think LA Takedown was in the 80s.
Yeah, 89.
And then this is the third iteration effectively of.
It is. The guy who plays the main cop is Vincent Hanna, which is the name of Al Pacino. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is kind of his third pass on the same concept. And obviously he felt like he hadn't gotten the story that he wanted to tell. And so he just kept making it. And I don't know if you could get away with that now. Maybe you could. People make movies all the time that nobody ever sees. So if you didn't like your first version and you can raise funding to do it again, then why not? But yeah, I mean, obviously it kind of reflects that he's clearly learned lessons of what worked and what didn't. And then this is that concept in the highest form. Cause Neil McCauley's based off a real guy. Mm-hmm. He was a criminal in Chicago.
Yeah.
and so is Hannah, ex-Marine turned detective. That's a real guy who I think put Macaulay behind bars, if I'm not mistaken, in Chicago. In the real story, I don't think Neil died. I need to double check that though. I could be really wrong on that. But so he had real life to inspire this, which I don't think a lot of people. I'm sure the Heat aficionados out there know this, plus even more things that I don't. But it helps that these guys are fashioned off the real deal, because it shows through. Because he for sure just feels authentic. Like everything about it just feels authentic. In fact, I think it's one of the few movies that actually feels like Los Angeles, like L.A., not Hollywood, no. not the Valley, like L.A. The way L.A. kind of feels. He's pretty accurate.
That kind of always feels not like an underbelly, but always feels like it's not on the up and up, you know.
No, and it feels real metallic too, and like
the concrete city
separated, like the whole scene of De Niro approaching Edie in that I mean, it's like another coffee shop or a restaurant or whatever, and like she's pretty abrasive or like he's abrasive to her when she kind of strikes up a conversation. That's very LA. That's so LA. Like in the fact that she's not supposed to be from Los Angeles. She's like the Midwest or Southern girl that's living out there alone, and like strikes up this conversation. He's just like, lady, what do you want to know what I do? You know, that's super Los Angeles. People were like that. I don't want this to turn into a banging on Los Angeles podcast, but
the weather's great.
Got that part right. The weather's beautiful.
Yeah.
Weather's beautiful. But yeah, it
but
feels
he loves
authentic.
LA. He loves LA. I mean, you could just,
and I'll give LA some love here in a minute on something I used to do when we lived out there that pertains to Heat.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Heat is one of these movies that I think shows the beauty of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. But the beauty of LA is when it is at night, when it lights up, the city of lights. And the helicopter shots of Los Angeles in Heat are amazing. And it's a really cool looking city. Nothing else looks like Los Angeles at night. I think it's at its best in the evenings. And what I used to do when I commuted from down near Santa Monica back into the valley, because you get another big set of sprawling lights coming into the valley after the sun's gone down, is I'd have the Heat soundtrack playing. Oh, because then you feel like you're in the freaking movie. Like if you're driving around at night, you come over that crest and you've got, Van Nuys all the way out to Burbank in the distance, all lit up. Yeah. Feels like freaking Heat. So yeah, it's very, very authentic, kind of the way it portrays that whole region. Feels right. And a lot of movies don't. They just use it as the backdrop, but it's like, that didn't feel like Los Angeles.
No. But I will say you can definitely listen to that soundtrack at least 3 or 4 times in your way from Santa Monica to the Valley. So,
Well, I didn't have it on loop. Listen to something else.
It was traffic. Just get, you either got to time it or just, man, I'm just going to put it on repeat. Just listen to it. Yeah. So, but yeah, he does. I will say like those, the one thing if I would cut would be some of those helicopter shots, of LA.
Oh,
but like,
come on.
I mean, no, but like, it's the only part that I could say is not integral to the story, not integral to the character building. It's more of integral to like the location, but it gives it this feel. Yeah.
It's a pacing thing. And you're right. It's the feel of it. It's the, yeah. No,
you can't take out the when Pacino goes up in the helicopter and then lands at like, whatever highway to get on and catch.
That's a cool scene. Yeah, it's a cool sequence.
Oh, it's such a good movie. I love this movie. It's my favorite movie. It's my favorite movie. Like, all I want to do right now is just watch Heat. Like, it's probably been 6 to 8 months since I've watched it.
All right, folks, we're going to have to kill the podcast early so that Alec could go screen this again.
Oh, my goodness, it's so good.
It is. It's, it'll be sad to me when I'm, like, even older, you know, maybe 60, and it's just this forgotten. I don't think it can be, though. There's no way. There's no way.
Movie buffs will like it. I mean, when my student staff that I have that work for me or whatever, who are all, you know, in college right now, none of them have seen it for the most part. I think I've only had in the 10 years that I've overseen students, 1 or 2 have actually seen it before I recommended to them. Several of them have seen it afterwards, but again, I mean, it's product of its time is not the right word, but it's definitely not a today movie. It is definitely slow is not the right word. It is methodical. It is purposeful. It is a character build. It is, well, you just said it. What was the shots? Pacing. Its pacing is so on point, but that pace is not fast. It's not like, hey, let's get into it and let's do all the things. It's more of like, this is the characters. This is the world.
It's kind of amazing that the studio let him leave it at 3 hours.
In 95. Like, I mean, come on. This is before Lord of the Rings. This is before.
And it had a big theatrical release. I remember watching the trailers for it come on and like being really excited. Like I wanted to watch it. And I think my mom and dad went on like a date night or something. My dad took my mom to go watch it. But I remember seeing the trailer and thinking that looks badass. Like even as a 13, 14-year-old, I was like, yeah, that looks incredible. But I don't know if I would have had the attention span then to appreciate it. I mean, I'd have been a little awfully young. So I'm glad I saw it when I did. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen it since. I have no idea. I don't know, 20, 30. I have no idea. I couldn't even, at least once or twice a year. So probably 20 times. I don't know. Oh, and I'll watch it again probably in the next 3 to 6 months.
And how many times have I watched specific scenes over and over again? And not just the fight scene, like not just the LA bank robber scene. Like, I mean, there's so many scenes that I just go back and just to watch, to appreciate, and to see what I, have forgotten, or to see new things. And it's a masterpiece. I mean, I don't think it's on AFI's top 100 movies of all time or whatever, but
really?
It could be. I don't know. I'm not that well versed in it, but I mean, if it's not, I mean, it needs to be one of those, this is how you make a movie. Like, I'm not gonna say it's flawless, but it's really close. Like, there's not too much that I'm like, that was terrible. I mean, obviously my favorite movie, I look past all that and think it's fantastic, but no, it's just from start to finish, from the opening sequence to the ending sequence, I'm enthralled. Like, there's no down points. The only parts that I'm like not bored is not the right word, but like the stuff with him and Edie, like, but that's still character building. That's still like showing him kind of trying to soften up, or trying to think past the next score, trying to think, what does my life look like, which shows him as that, latter stage criminal of like, it's no longer the rush. It's no longer about, the next fix. It's like, how do I get out and alive? I
don't think it ever was about the next fix. Like, no. He's the way character's written, you would never guess that that's what motivates. He's the only one that has an end game. Mm-hmm. Tom Sizemore's like, well, for me, it is the rush. The action is the juice, which I saw where somebody said they saw a guy on the street that had a t-shirt that said the action is the juice. And they were like, that is amazing. But yeah, everybody else, Kilmer's character is a gambling junkie.
Yep.
And then Danny Trejo's seems to have it together fairly well too. It's like him and DeNiro of that group are the only two that seem to have decent motivations for, as far as, I mean, they're criminals, right? They're terrible people. I mean, they're murderous, but they're the only ones with a purpose behind this besides just a rush or more cash to go
gamble
put down
or do something
with the bookies. Like, so yeah, here's what's going to blow your mind, because I didn't realize this. So it's only ranked number 111 on the IMDb top 250, which is just criminally low.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like an 8.1 or no, 8.3, but yeah, it's only 111. And then it wasn't even nominated for an Academy Award.
No, which is just ridiculous.
Not one nomination. Which there are movies like this that just get overlooked. Mm-hmm. And this is one. Another one that just got completely overlooked was a box office bomb. Was Shawshank Redemption. Mm-hmm. Did not do well. Picked up this cult following on video, and I think Heat followed a similar. It didn't have a disastrous box office release. Like, people saw it in theaters, but the legend grew due to home video. And I get worried about that now with some of this stuff that comes out. Like, I don't think Netflix has got the same ability for some of these movies to rise to the top the way it did when there were only so much stuff on the wall at like Blockbuster for people to rent or buy on VHS and then later DVD. I didn't get a hold of Heat until it was on DVD.
Same.
Somewhere around, I'm thinking 2000, maybe 99, somewhere in there. I think is when my dad bought it and was like, "You need to watch this." Like, he finally was like, it was a rite of passage almost. Ben, you need to. I'm
trying to think who showed it to me
and watch this movie. Really?
I think it was my cousin Paul. I think Paul showed it to me.
Yeah. So
I forget exactly
somewhere in there in the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. I'm thinking late 90, no later than 2000 did I sit down and watch Heat on DVD.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I don't remember my first viewing of it well. Unlike some movies where I could tell you exactly, everything about that night of when I saw it. But weird. So I'm looking at the nominations for Best Picture, the 5 or whatever that had. Mm-hmm. So it was Braveheart. Yeah. It was Apollo 13. Mm-hmm. It was Babe.
Big in the City.
It was. Babe.
That's the first. That's the second one, right? Big in the City.
Yeah, I think so. This is the first one, and then Sense and Sensibility, and then The Postman or Il Postino. So not the Kevin Costner one.
I'm so disappointed that was not nominated.
I would have been if that had been nominated. Because I forgot when it was, because it's a forgettable movie. I would have been furious. Now, granted,
The Postman, that's the Waterworld with the United States Postal Service, right?
No. What is it? It is a comedy drama film co-written by and starring Massimo Troisi. It's Italian apparently, and directed by English filmmaker Michael Radford. It's based on a 1985 novel Ardiente Paciencia.
Yeah, so we don't need to talk about that.
No, we don't need to talk about that. I mean, I haven't seen it, so I can't talk about it anyways. But no. But go like Heat gets the snub. I mean, Braveheart, fantastic. Apollo 13, great. I would say, like, obviously I can't go back in time to feel like how I felt because I did see Braveheart pretty close. Like I saw Braveheart before I saw Heat. Obviously I saw Apollo 13 the year it came out. So Braveheart's good, but I would take Heat over Braveheart any day of the week.
Most people would, and there's a part of that is the legal woes, and then the anti-Semitic remarks of Mel Gibson have kind of tainted Braveheart. Amongst some people, yeah. Most people know. But what I noticed is over time, the excitement around Braveheart is really been overtaken by Gladiator. Mm-hmm. Like, most people, when they put those two movies up next to each other, they're like overwhelmingly now Gladiator's the better film. And that didn't used to be the case. I remember talking to a guy that preferred Braveheart big time. But it seems like the more time that passes, that Gladiator just seems to hold up better than Braveheart. And then the fact that Braveheart's not even remotely historically accurate. It's not. That's not what they looked like. That's not what they wore. It's cool.
That's not where they fought that battle. So it's not how they won that battle. Yeah. But but again, then you have this long movie in Braveheart. So like, what, I was like, it's 3 hours, 3.5 hours, something like that. Braveheart. I remember it was like 2 tapes or whatever, or like 2 discs or some crazy nonsense when we were watching it.
I just wonder if Heat was ahead of its time by like maybe a good 5 years.
Yeah.
Like because
if it came out with like Gladiator or
yeah, if it would come out in say 2000 or as late as 04, 05. For sure, at that point, I think it gets nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, especially all the technical categories, cinematography, editing. I just can't believe it didn't even get a technical nom. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
But I think the number of films that were nominated was shorter.
Yes. So it was a limit of
way
5.
Shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's like 10, up to 10, I think, or up to 8 or some crazy number.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, that's not that important of a conversation. The reality is Heat is tremendous.
Mm-hmm. Go see it.
Frankly, if you haven't seen it by this point and you consider yourself some sort of movie fan, then shame on you. But if for our listeners that are more of casual viewers, which is great, which is fine. Put it, we've spoiled the whole damn thing for you, but shame on you too.
It's still worth it. But even spoiled, it's still worth it. It's still going to be worth your time to watch it. And like this is definitely a movie that you want to pay attention to, not scroll on your phone and go through. Like this, the shots are purposeful. Like Ben was saying, you can take almost any still of the movie and it's cinematic. Like there's not a wasted shot. There's not a wasted moment. Everything's building to certain moments, and crescendos, goes back down, crescendos again, goes back down, and then crescendos again. So it's definitely well worth it. So this is a movie that I'm not even on my phone when I watch it for the 20th or 30th time. I'm still like just laser focused. And I can tell you there's a lot of movies that I, love that. I don't care as much, So.
Yep. Yeah, the list is short. I think of those, the list is very short, and Heat is one on that short list. Well, we're gonna wrap this up.
Yeah,
appreciate everybody listening, watching, tuning in on the podcast, and watching us on YouTube. We will roll out another episode here shortly, every Monday. That is the plan.
That is the plan. There's plenty of movies to go through. So
plenty. Yeah.
Plenty. Not all of them will be great like Heat, but actually most of them will be great like Heat.
We'll probably do for something that we didn't like, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So thanks, everybody.